Welcome back. You are listening to the Mari Mkwanda Show on Salam Media, and it is time for our marriage segment. So, to maintain a successful relationship, it is necessary that both people maintain their individuality and respect the individuality of their partner. Joining me on the line to discuss this in detail is the author and relationship coach, Margaret Hungwe. Good morning, Margaret.
Good morning, Myron. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, and yourself.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining me. If you have any comments, questions, queries, or suggestions, you may leave them in the comment section below, or you can send them to us on our WhatsApp line. The number is 061 766 0355. Yes, Margaret, today we are discussing individuality in a relationship. In fact, individuality to strengthen the relationship. First of all, what is individuality in a relationship?
All right. It's such an interesting topic, hey? And when I got the topic, I said to myself, okay, wow. But anyway, we need probably to do two definitions here. The definition of marriage as well as in individuality. The reason why is that when we are growing up, or we are even when you want to get married, we are advised that you know what, marriage is difficult work, it is hard work. And then you also begin to wonder that the same people say when you get married you become one, then what becomes of that hardness when you are now one? What then becomes of the marriage, right? And then when you look at the Wikipedia's definition on marriage, it says marriage, also called matrimony or wedlock, is culturally recognized as union between people called spouses that establishes rights and obligations between them, as well as between them and their children, and between them and their in-laws, right? So here we are getting a proper definition on what is marriage. It's a matrimony, right? Where people are recognized in this union. So these were two people that are coming into a relationship. And when we look at a marriage, we talk about it as you are now one, right? You are coming from wherever you're coming, I'm coming from wherever I'm coming, and we came together to become one, right? Then when you look at individualistic, you also ask yourself, okay, what are we talking about here? When we talk of individuality, when we talk of marriage being one, when we talk of two people becoming one, then what is it of individualistic? Right. So from my perspective, this is when you are no longer having the idea. You are in marriage, but the idea of marriage also, as I've defined already, decide to leave or you deem to have the rights to yourself. So what kind of rights are we talking about? It might be that you want to keep your resources separate. Maybe you want to maintain your own account, you know. You do not want to have an account, both of you as husband and wife. Also, you might also want to separate your social networks to say, these are my friends and these are your friends. So we will meet at home. Or you might say, no, I do not want to have children. I just want to be married, but I don't have children. But maybe the spouse is saying, I actually want to have kids. So now how do you end up going to coming to one goal? Also, you might say that, you know what, I just want to be independent by myself in terms of finances, in terms of everything that I'm doing. I just want to be independent. But when we talk of marriage, we are talking of interdependence, where we are both coming into this union and still become interdependent, as well as we might have things that we want to still have individually. And sometimes when you look at individualistic, some people opt to have, they do not want to carry your family name. For an example, a woman might say, for an example, I look at myself and say to my husband, I no longer want to carry a Hungwe family. I would rather have my own surname. I want to carry it on. That's another individualistic thing that you can do also as an individual. So it's on many facets of the marriage, on how you want to look at it individually. So when you define these two now, then there is need of saying, okay, so when we talk of marriage, what is it that I want as an individual? So I don't know if I do justice to the definition as you asked me.
No, you did do justice, especially down into saying that this is what marriage is and this is what individuality is. And it does make sense, because also in African cultures, there's this misconception that about individuality, like especially for women. When you get married, they tell you that, okay, your husband is now your mother, your husband is your father, your husband is your brother, he's your sister, he's your best friend, you don't have any friends. And when you think about it, you're like, but I do have friends, I do have my own mother, why can't I go into my marriage being myself, having those things, and still becoming one with my husband? Why do I have to like sort of cut off the umbilical cord or cut off myself from everybody else to fit into that lifestyle of the husband? So how can we be speaking about that? How can we be free from these cultural norms? I mean, we have to try and change the way our elders see things. And okay, it's going to be a bit difficult, challenging rather, but we need to discuss these cultural norms. We still need to preserve our individuality.
All right. So before I go there, I just wanted to say this. There are important questions that you need to ask yourself as you get into marriage, or as you are in marriage, when you start to realize that I feel like I'm not still sane, or something is now happening. I feel like I'm deprived. You need to ask yourself some questions to say, what was the conversations or agreements that you had with your spouse before marriage? What is it that you discuss to say, you know what, these are my expectations towards this marriage? Because marriage is not about your husband only or your wife only. Marriage is about two people. So what did you agree on? Because see, as you said earlier on, just because I'm married doesn't mean that I'm going to stop existing. Not at all. I'll continue being me. I'll continue being myself. But now I have gotten marriage, which is not going to take away what I strongly believe about myself. So how did you communicate? How open were you to each other to say, you know what? This is what I actually want to be in my life, right? So what did you speak about? Then the other thing is, as you are now married, maybe somewhere in this journey of marriage, it has altered your goals or what you had probably even spoken about earlier on. So how do you go about it? Maybe the reason why there was an altering of goals is maybe sickness happened in the marriage. You got sick at one point and you decided that, you know what, let me stop this. Or there was lack, in terms of finances, there's no more money. Maybe you wanted to go to school to further your education while it's in marriage, but sickness came, and that now hampered this the goals or the things that you were expecting for yourself. How do you go back in track? Then when you look at that, we also look at what are the factors in marriage that an individual should not lose, so, as a guide. These are just guidelines, because we see that society or custom has painted this picture. For an example, as a woman, when you get married, what you need to know is that you are getting married, you are going to have your children. And when you get your children, or where you are getting married to, it means that those are the people that are going to support financially. No longer that you look after even your people because you have been married. It almost seems like your family stops to exist as a woman, right? And then now you realize that you start to have some resentment in this marriage to say, but I've got a family, I never fell from the sky. So what happens of where I'm coming from? So some of the guidelines I would want to give you to maintain your individuality is to say, learn to spend time by yourself. And it is so important to have that me time, to say, for such a time, I just want to have my me time. But what is important is effective communication. Have you communicated with your spouse? Or have you agreed to say, you know what, such a time, I simply just want to have my me time. And in that me time, give it for me such that there is no noise, there is no impact when I'm having this me time. What is important is communication. Never stop hanging around with your friends. Before I was married, I had friends, probably from varsity, from school, even from when I was growing up. I had friends. And I don't know if you've ever realized, those people, when you get to meet with them or even just hang around, they kind of bring this thing in you that you might probably have forgotten while it's now you're married. So they bring that thing. or they just bring you back to Mother Earth. Do you still remember when we were growing up, we used to do ABCD, and you just get revitalized, re-energized, because you are not in these confines of marriage, and it's all about marriage. And also, have a hobby. Myself, I love running. I love going to the gym. Have a hobby that is you. I always advocate to spend time with family, to do things together as a family. But when we on this particular topic, you have a hobby that is just you. So that when you go on the road to run, you are just you. You are having a good time by yourself. You have that hobby. Is it reading? Is it gym? Is it whatever it could be? You have that. And also, one thing that you should never forget or be taken away from you is that thing, that goal that you had in your life when you were growing up. You might have thought, like, I want to be a philanthropist, I want to be a businesswoman, or maybe I just want to help people, or even I want to be in the marketplace and be a CEO, manager, whatever it could be that you wanted to be. Where are you right now in terms of that? Why? Because if it has been taken away from you because your spouse doesn't want you to pursue that, but you discussed this and you agreed on it, but all of a sudden you are being told, for example, as a woman, that your job is to stay home. I need you to be a full-time mom. What becomes of that which you wanted? Or as a man, you've always wanted to play golf or to play soccer. And then maybe your wife goes like, soccer at your age, stay home with the kids. Don't, it's do's and don'ts, it's do's and don'ts. So that individualistic is taken away, such that resentment builds. The communication is now impacted. The love itself becomes impacted in the marriage.
And I think this is why one or the other partner would say, you've changed. You've changed because you've now become too much of the person that you've lost yourself, basically. That is why you've all of a sudden changed, according to them. Speaking about this change, can a person become too lost in their own individuality that they do not recognize it?
Yes, so true, 100%. Earlier on, I gave the definitions of these two. So in a marriage setup, we are saying it's two people that have come together, right? We are going to find a common goal that's going to bring us together, that's going to make us strong as a couple, right? In there, you're going also to start to realize that there are things that are going to come up in terms of interest, that you end up realizing that, we've got a common interest in this thing. We actually, even in our meantime, my husband can sit in that couch, I can sit in that corner, we are all reading and we are fine, and it's our individualistic even moments. So that you having that, right? And then you go to extreme, whereby there is no longer a mutual understanding. We are no longer agreeing on this side of individualistic. It means it's going to impact the marriage. For an example, we had agreed that we are going to have 2 or 3 children. Now we get into marriage. I said, you know what? I just agreed just because I wanted to get married. That's going to affect the marriage. We agreed that this is what we want to do. We agreed that by such a certain age, we are going to do this in life. But look at it now, where we are. Then you suddenly realize that, you know what? Those were the promises that we made that time. Now I am changed. I am 40. It's now all these reasons to make sure that we are no longer together. That individualistic becomes also selfish. Why? Because you are only looking at the interest of yourself, not of your spouse. But I strongly believe that in that individualism in a marriage, you are still able, not only able, but 100% committed to the marriage, as well as also taking into consideration the views, as well as what your spouse is saying, bringing that together to make one strong marriage.
Now, why do so many people lose a piece of themselves when they are engulfed in this new relationship?
So for women, we have suddenly arrived. We wanted to be married, right? Because when we look at the culture as well, the culture defines people with marriage. It doesn't look at people who doesn't want to be married and say, no, they are fine. No. They actually look at people and say, if you are married, you have achieved a lot.
Yeah.
After that, they are expecting you to have children. So despite that, maybe your husband might be to blame in terms of fertility issues. They look at the woman and say, you are not being able to bring kids, right? Then maybe you actually bring kids, but you decide to go for cesarean option. To say, no, I'm not going to do normal birth, but I want to do Caesar. They are going to say you are actually kind of a half woman. You didn't feel the pain of bearing children or of bringing kids. So you see, the culture, the customs, the society is so much to say on marriage, right? But when you look at yourself, you did not just wake up and arrived in marriage. Marriage is just a part of your path, of your process in life. God forbid one day you wake up, maybe your spouse dies. So are you going to stop living because your spouse died? Not at all. You still continue to live. So realize that marriage is just part of the process of your life, of where you are. There, you also make decisions. Do I need to have children to bring another generation? Yes. If not, are we in tune? Are we together with my spouse to say we are not? Then if it's that's the case, go for it. Maybe you decide to do adoption. That is your path in your marriage. So for women, never think that you have arrived in marriage. It is just the process. Why am I saying arrived? You would see that the moment sometimes you get married as a woman, I'm still coming to the men. The moment you get married as a woman, you stop taking care of yourself. I mean, if you used to do nails, if you used to go to the beauty parlor, if you used to look at yourself in terms of even your how you carry yourself, how you dress, and all those things, it has suddenly just stopped. You are now this kind of a woman who just goes like, whatever, I'm married, so I'm fine. I got the ring, so what else? Then you look at a man, right? Maybe you also just wanted to have a wife at home for people to say, no, he is married and he's got children, but you are still behaving like a bachelor staying in a one bedroom somewhere. You are not taking your responsibilities as a man, as a father, as a husband in the home. Why? Because you just wanted to be married. And sometimes men go like, my parents wanted me to have a wife, so I got the wife the way they wanted, but you are not into it. You are doing it to please other people. So then you realize that when it's like that, it impacts now this marriage negatively. Why? Because there is, as I said earlier, there is selfishness in there, and there's no oneness. Hence, now even that individualistic, it's not working at all. When you look at it, that it's not working at all.
And it doesn't work. It doesn't benefit for anyone in the
Sure.
relationship. In fact, it only makes
Mm-hmm.
things worse.
Mm-hmm.
So, what can we do? What can people do? I mean, now that we have identified the problem, we have to have solutions.
All right. So one thing that you need to realize in marriage is never stop becoming. I don't know if you read a book by Michelle Obama, Becoming Mrs. Obama, but never stop becoming you just because you are married. I remember when I got married, I only had a diploma. And I knew what I wanted to be. I wanted to have a degree. I wanted to have an MBA. I wanted to have all these things, right? And to be honest with you, I did not stop just because I got married. I continued and I'm still continuing. Why? Because I am me. I want to get, when you look at Maslow's hierarchy, I want to have that satisfaction of me, of saying, I achieved this because I wanted to be, not because someone pushed me or not because someone stopped me. Not at all. I became an author because I wanted to be me. Right? So never stop becoming what you want to be as an individual, despite that you are married. If you are a man, never stop becoming what you want to be as a man, as a professional, wherever that you are, never stop becoming. For an example, you might look at I had a season once in my marriage where my husband wanted to keep his hair, like he wanted an afro and a beard. Hey, so I had a little bit of struggle trying to navigate that, because to me, I'm like, a man is just supposed to be clean shaven and look smart. To me, looking smart is meaning that you don't even need to have that big hair as a man, right? Why? Because that's what I grew up with as well. And then my husband is like, this is what he wants. And he would really take care of the beard, comb it, comb the hair. And my heart is just like, oh, man, right? But this is what he wanted himself, not me. So get to a common ground of understanding each other, even when you go through phases, because the same way we were 5 years into our marriage and the way we are now 17 years in marriage is different. But what we've always known is that we get to a point of communicating and understanding each other as we go in this marriage, and also realizing that we are also moving with time. Things are evolving. Who thought there was going to be COVID in one part of our lives? Who thought that you'd be working from home, homeschooling? Nobody. But in that change, we are still finding that marriage has to be worked on, and we still need to find that common goal as a couple. So never stop becoming. Be what you want. And if it is altered, as I said earlier on, or if maybe you got into this marriage and now your spouse is now saying otherwise, no, it can be. Then now you need, probably, if you've tried to speak together, getting romping another third party who is independent, because sometimes we try to look for our relatives. So this is now dependent with that kind of relatives who said they're going to take on, because some of them might not really look at this thing fairly. They might look at it from their spouses, their relatives perspective. So look for someone who is independent to come in and sit down with you guys to say, you know what, this is what we are going through. How do we go back to what we'd agreed on, or to what I want? Because this is me. For an example, you might have started as a lawyer. Then now you feel like, you know what, no, I no longer want to be a lawyer. I actually want to be a trainer, or I want to be something else. That should not stop you. Yes, I married you as a lawyer, but this is where I am now and this is what I want. So marriage is about communication and really moving together, understanding each other to say, this is where we are. I am going to support you fully in this.
Wow, that sums it up, and it all comes down to communication. And I noticed that in many of the discussions that I have with the relationship coaches, they all bring it down to communication. Talk about things. Do not brush issues under the carpet. Discuss it as it arises, etc., and talk about what you want as an individual in your marriage. Thank you so much for your
Yes,
time,
and
Margaret.
just to add there,
Oh, yeah,
expectations,
quickly.
when you talk of communication, expectations, people are sitting there saying, my spouse is supposed to use common sense. Common sense is not common. Don't think on my behalf. Rather tell me or talk to me to say, no, this is where I am right now. I feel like I want to change my career. Don't say they're supposed to see that I'm frustrated at this job. Yes, I can say, but what do you want? So expectations need to be spoken about. I'm just echoing to what you were saying earlier on about communication. Speak about your expectations and communicate them.
Mhm. Thank you so much once again for your time, Margaret, and for the lovely discussion. And have a lovely day.
Thank you so much for having me. Bye bye.
Pleasure. Bye bye. That was Margaret Hungwe, an author as well as a relationship coach, talking about preserving your individuality to strengthen your relationship. And it comes down to communication. Communicate what you want in the relationship. Tell your spouse what it is that you want, what it is that you're feeling. And don't forget, you are still yourself. Don't lose yourself in a relationship. Ladies, if you feel like going back to school, studying, learning a new career, learning a new skill, getting a hobby, do it. Do it for your sake. And remember, if you have kids and they're going to see you happy and then they're going to feed off that happiness. But if they see you sad and depressed, then they're going to feed off that negativity as well. Men also, same advice to you. If you feel like starting a new career, go ahead. You want to grow an afro? Go ahead. It all comes down to you and what you want. I mean, you can even joke about it later on. In fact, it's just going to be like a passing phase, as they always say, like, oh, it was just a phase. And yeah, hopefully it will work out for everyone, inshallah. So thank you for joining me on this segment. Do stay tuned. We'll be right back after the break.